Welcome everybody. So lovely to see all of you. Thank you so much for coming tonight to our faculty discussion. My name is Dustin, for those of you who haven't been here. My pronouns are he, him, his, and I am the program manager for the Fine Arts Work Center. We have a great lineup for our discussion tonight. We're very excited to hear from poet Kimberly Blaeser and painter Joe Diggs. After they each present, we're going to invite them both to the stage for a group Q&A with you all. But before we begin, a little bit of housekeeping and other items of interest. A reminder that Thursday night is student night. The sign-up sheet, as you know, is in the student lounge on the coffee table. We encourage you to sign up for that. We'd also like to remind you to consider supporting our honor tax by making a donation to the Native Land Conservancy. The QR code and the URL are in the back of the room on the flyer on the desk. Kim will be signing books in the back after the faculty talk. Books by other members of this week's faculty are also available at the back of the room and in the bookstore, as are books by this year's faculty. We also have some very pretty and newly designed Falk merchandise. We have t-shirts, tote bags. We have fire sale items for a few of last season's designs. So be sure and check that out. The Hudson D. Walker Gallery, right back here, is open after the event. Right now, we're showing our amazing summer exhibition called To Move a Mountain, which was curated by past Falk Fellow Cody Brown and features artwork by other past Falk Fellows. The proceeds of all work sold will go to support Falk's programs, so be sure and check it out after the event. We want to give a shout out to the Arts Foundation of Cape Cod and the Cape Cod 5 Foundation, who support our summer public programming. Restrooms are still located right down that hallway. We have assisted listening devices at the back of the room for anybody who may need one. Please speak to Miracle. She can get you set up with one. And finally, please do us all a favor and turn off your cell phones or turn them to silent. So let's get the show on the road. I'd like to invite one of Kim's students, Sylvia Peck, to the stage, who will introduce Kim Blaeser. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Sylvia Peck, and I grew up the first 10 years of my life in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. So when I realized that Kimberly Blaeser was the Poet Laureate of Milwaukee, Wisconsin, I wanted to know everything about her. And I assumed, as I sort of first do at first blush, oh, we would understand each other perfectly and we would be just everything alike, which of course is absolutely not true, but opens in the way that she teaches into gorgeous dichotomies and alternates and fractals and opposites. And she makes you feel, in a very whimsical, sort of head-tossing, irreverent way, completely alive and completely alert. And it's just a tremendous privilege to be in her class. So I grew up, as I said, in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, so I know very small little details. A bubbler is what we call a drinking fountain. The low hills are what we call kettle moraine, and we learn this like before kindergarten. Kettle moraine, so we think of it as like, you know, something to eat that would come out of a kettle, because we're so little we don't know. And we know that Wisconsin is shaped like a mitten, and we know that, well, actually, I think Milwaukee is like here, and we know that Lake Michigan, our lake, even though it's not named Lake Wisconsin, is as far as the eye can see. And we don't actually know that Michigan is on the other side when we're 5. We think it's our lake, and it's as vast as an ocean. So long after that, decades later, I wound up, a few little similarities. I don't have sisters. I do have a brother, like Kimberly, though mine is a younger brother, hers is an older brother, and we're both mothers. So when I was a mother, decades and decades later, in Manhattan on the Upper West Side, for reasons strange, mysterious reasons. And she teaches a lot about listen for the mysteries. It's complicated. It's so strange. Out of those mysteries, I put my son in a Jewish day school so that I would have a place to go, a synagogue where I had grown up as a red diaper baby, utterly unassimilated to Judaism. And I used to sit in the balcony of this large sanctuary, and the nursery school teachers and the kindergarten teachers would teach way down in the front row, these little pockets like that side of the room, these little pockets of children. And I remember 2 vocabulary words in Hebrew from many, many years. My son went through 9th grade there. And you can even try them. There's one word, and the little children would go, katan. And he'd say, scrunch up as tiny as you can. That means small. And the other word is gadol, and get as big as you can. That's all I know in Hebrew. Katan, gadol. So Kimberly teaches that there are things in the world, details in the world, things we observe, that we experience, that are very small things, the small nature of things. And she has a poem about the tiny, thinner than eyelashes, fingernails, translucent, of baby mice. Now just take that line. I mean, can you say it without tearing up? The thin, translucent fingernails of baby mice. Where that went in my own life was I have held a 6-day-old puppy. They have indentations where their ears are and sort of opaque but weird indentations like hoods, like falcon hoods or something, where their eyes will be because they're born blind and deaf. And so they just kind of push with one leg towards the place where there's food. And they're very persistent, and they take 10 weeks to gestate. And I wouldn't have known that had I not had a bitch come into season and have a singleton male. But it's amazing, just floors you. The other thing I wanted to do, this is her book. It's called Ancient Light, which is a glorious way to think about light. Ancient Light. And it's for sale in the back. And, she has many, many accolades, where I have an index card and no glasses. She's won many awards. She founded the Indigenous Nations Poets. She's a writer, photographer, a scholar. She has five previous poetry collections, 5, with gorgeous titles. And she's a citizen of White Earth Nation. And I love that because we don't actually think of our Earth, well, Anglos, as white. You know, we think of it as the things with colors grow out of, but we think of it as dark. But White Earth Nation, that's a shock of an expression. And then she'll tell you her clan. She taught at UW Milwaukee, and she's an Institute of American Indians Arts MFA faculty member and the 2024 Mackey Chair in Creative Writing at Beloit College. There's one poem I just want to go into a little more detail. It's about her grandmother. And it's a beautiful, beautiful poem in one of her earlier collections. Not this one, but her lots of kin appear in this one also. And she comes in on her grandmother, and her grandmother knows it's her with her back turned, so from behind her. And she folds her gray, yellow hair up into a braid on top of her head. She wipes her hands on a damp kitchen apron in the dank room, and she says, "There's the table, sit down, let me feed you." And then the poem goes on to the second portion, and there's this beautiful part that I want us to do a little bit of echoing on. And there's a beautiful part in part 2 where her grandmother or the narrator says, so I'm going to say it, No, I'm going to say it, and then I want you to echo it. So, and I'm taking some liberties with the stanza. Smoothing away time. I am in place at your table. I wait for you to come. Poetry. Without further ado, Kimberly Blaeser.
Bonjour, Nindidawe Maganadok. Hello, my relatives. Kim Blaeser, Nindigenous Anishinaabe Kwe, Nindao, Gawababi Bonikag, Nindunjaba, Migizi, Nindodem. I'm Kim Blaeser. I'm Anishinaabe from the White Earth Nation of northwestern Minnesota and a Migizi or Eagle clan. And I'm really delighted to be with you. And I want to say chimigwech to the Fine Arts Work Center, especially to Dustin and David for all the work they did to bring us here, to the staff who's taking such great care of us, and to my beautiful students with whom I've been having so much fun. So I'm really grateful to be here. And what I'm going to do tonight is I'm going to have some of the photos that I take just showing behind me. And don't fixate too much. They'll come by about 3 or 4 times, so you don't have to worry if you didn't catch something. Most of them are images of place. Some of them are images of poems that are not the normal stanza, that might be visual poetry or what I call pictopoems. So I just wanted you to see some of the other things that are happening in this book that I can't really convey without you seeing things. So because I do layers of text and image sometimes, and also that my work is created rather in concert with places to which I feel I belong. So I thought I'd begin with a poem that actually introduces me by way of place. And the only thing about, my plan is it's always hard to find the pages. The where in my belly. Scientists say my brain and heart are 73% water. They underestimate me. A small island menace, I emerged from Minnesota's northern lakes. The where of Monoman, wild rice in my belly. I am from boats and canoes and kayaks, from tribal ghosts who rise at dawn, dance like wisps of fog on water. My where is White Earth Nation and white pine forests, knees summer stained with blueberries, pink lady slippers open and wild as my feet. I grew up where math was canasta, where we recited times tables while ice fishing at 20 below, spent nights whistling to northern lights. I am from old medicine barks and teas, from early, the air damp with cedar, the crack of a mick, beaver tails on water, their echo now, a warning to where fish become a percentage of mercury, become a poison statistic, to where copper mines back against 1 million blue acres of sacred. I am from Nabe and Ogeechee-Daqueg, women warriors and water protectors, from seed gatherers and song makers, the wet where pulse in my belly, whispers and repeats like the endless chant of waves on ledge rock, waves on ledge rock, on ledge rock, on waves, on water. Nupi. So I'm going to try not to say too many things in preface to the poems, but I'm happy to answer questions either in the discussion or later. But I did just want to say a really small thing about the trajectory of this book, Ancient Light. So it is really begins with some of the harder aspects of our history, including colonization and the destruction of the environment. But then it looks, as it moves through the volume, it looks for how are the ways that we survive, flourish, heal, unify, etc. And all of those things can broadly be understood as ancient light, but there are very specific things that they involve. So the book touches on those as we move along. But it does begin in this space where we have been impacted by colonization and the mindset of colonization and all that has wrought. Poem on disappearance. Beginning with this continent, draw 1491. Each mountain, compass point, indigenous. Trace trade routes, languages, seasonal migrations. Don't become attached. Yes, reshape by discovery, displacement. Move your pencil point quickly now, as if pursued. A cavalry of possession that erases homelands. We shrink in time lapse of colonial barter, disappear. Now draw a brown face painted for ceremony, half a face, nothing. Draw nothing around a crumpled bird body, no wings. Draw emptiness inside desecrated burial mounds, a stretch of absence where fallopian tubes once curved in hope. Sketch void across Buffalo Prairie. Draw the empty of elk, of passenger pigeon, of silver trout. Conjure with your hand the face, the shape of girl blooming, curves of face, her laughing eyes, you've seen them, postered and amber alerted, missing, evening news, and gone. Draw a woman wrapped in a blanket, a child's body weighted. Draw stones sinking into every river on the map. Draw carrion blackening skies, carrion plucking vision from round brown faces. Draw missing, draw murdered. Work carefully now. Turn your hand to the new continent. Again picture it. Nothing. So there are poems that set that context, and then there are poems that are asking, how do we heal from this? And I was invited to write a poem that focused it on dignity as an endangered species. Dignity itself as endangered. And you can think that in this time, in this era, we can understand that very well. And I went to this event that happened in DC when there was an Indigenous man on the mall in America, and he was drumming, and you may have seen this because it was all over the news, and he was confronted by these youth, like up close, and do you remember what he did? He did nothing. He just kept drumming. And to me, that was absolutely an embodiment of dignity. So I wanted to be able to honor that, and that's what I wrote the poem in response to that invitation about. This is the only time I'm going to tell you a story. I hope you don't mind. But Indigenous Nations Poets had our first mentoring retreat in DC, and I thought, what better place to pull out this poem and read? So for the faculty reading, I read this poem, and then this was during the era when Joy Harjo was our US Poet Laureate, and as we closed out our retreat, we had this incredible dance party outside, and it was just beautiful. So then we're all going off to celebrate this week-long mentoring retreat, and some of my fellows came and said, Dr. B, the man you read that poem for is here. So I went up, and saw him, and quite honestly, he had aged, and he was looking a little bit bedraggled, and I went up and I just said, I just want to tell you how really impressed I was by your behavior in that instance, and how, and then I said that I actually dedicated a poem to you. And I had youth that brought me up there, he had youth with him, and they were like, can you read it to him? And so I had two things, because we had come from this dance party. I had the book that was in, it was before this book, but it was in a little French book that came out, and I had my purse, but I said, yes, I'd love to read it to you. So I stood right by Nathan Phillips with the capital light. You can find these photos on Facebook behind us, read him the poem, and then I said, let me sign this book for you. So I turned back to the stone wall and was signing, and I heard him say to his youth, he said, I'm in that poem. That poem is about me. And it was just so beautiful. Like sometimes poetry finds its way, right? We send it out in the world and we don't know what's going to happen. So then later that evening, I was late for dinner because I had this little, incident. And so I came to table, everyone was there. I said, you'll never know what happened, blah, blah, blah. And one of the people at the table said, oh, that was serendipity. And then Lucy Tapahansa, who is the inaugural poet of the Navajo Nation, she said, that's not serendipity. The spirits were all over that. So anyway, poetry finds its way. The story's longer than the poem. On the dignity of gestures for Nathan Phillips. 1, remember hands ungloved and notched by life. Watch them pour stovetop coffee into tin cups, lift cross poles onto fence bucks, mend nets, rock your children. 2, pay homage and speak the names of sweepers and shovelers, canners, cafeteria cooks, baby doctors, and deathbed watchers. Esme, Dale, Margaret, David, Mike, and Colleen. 3, receive all gifts, crocheted Afghan or prize money, with humility. Gratitude spreads easy as butter. Unworthiness endures. 4, watch the eyes of turtle. Admire the neck cording of swans. Study wing beats and tail rhythms. Note how otter sows stoop to lift pups. Listen to wind in fall, to trees bending and unbroken. Announce like spring frogs the unfolding of each holy year. Carry candles into cathedrals, poetry into prisons. 5, do not become beast in the fray. Remember the indigenous hands that drummed on the man who stood strong. So Sylvia mentioned the small in my work, and you will see that you've been seeing some of the small in the images. So I have a group of poems that are related to Anishinaabe dream songs, that are probably related to the Zen haiku tradition, but it is a form that I have developed that the poems are they're not a sequence as much as an aesthetic. And they're all called The Way We Love Something Small. And there's a group of them in here, and there are other places as well. And I just want to read you a handful of those poems. The way we love something small. In the cold, blur hour of winter, the world wound tight and blue, while we fold and triangle white paper, our kindergarten scissors and act of God. We open, close, and fractal, replicating. Even then, our tenderness, too big for accuracy. The way we love something small. Moon glow in the saddle of mountains, a golden eye opening. Now we who watch Jesus rising fill. We too grow round with being seen. The way we love something small. Alaskan poems you didn't write live like drum beats under your skin. Whispers scratch you on the other side of sound. What is meter but another word for memory? Caribou bending to water in blue light. The unreality of mountain peaks at dawn. Endless tundra littered with shed antlers, all jagged and boned, glimpses of eternity. We watch days bump suns in Alaskan skies, our pockets empty of words for measure. How eloquent this lapping against singularity. The way we love something small. Inky leaf shadows on snow, each animal track a hollow, trace of bird feet, double oval of deer, the glyphs we make, the ones we follow. The way we love something small. Vowel sounds from a land, language not yet lost. Muningwanekanig minis. My tongue and island too, swimming where Migas rises. This ache, tiny but growing, the place I keep it. I think the place I keep it is often in poems. All right, I'm going to share with you one other aspect of this, and then I'm going to close with either a poem from this book or my older book. But one of the other things you'll find in this volume is that I do use Anishinaabe-Moan, which is the Ojibwe language. And my grandparents were native language speaker, my older aunts and uncles were native language speakers, and then we had boarding schools. So my mother was one of the youngest, and I grew up in my early years with my grandparents, so I did have exposure to the language, and I feel like the language inhabits me. But education in a white institution is a funny thing. And so as an adult, I've been trying to reawaken that. And I actually, sometimes I've written about this a lot, but there's one poem in which I actually ask this question: how do you conjugate after 40? So Ojibwe-Moan, Anishinaabe-Moan, is a very interesting language. I'm just going to teach you one word. Do you want to learn one word? This is the longest word in the Ojibwe language. Minabashki, Minasagoni, Batosa Chagani, Badwingwash Chagani, Bekwajigan. 64 letters. Do you want to know what it means? Blueberry pie. And the reason it's so long is because the way the language works is there are these center words, right? The morpheme that have these other words that show relationships, or they're linking, and it's also telling the story of the making of blueberry pie. Do you want to try to say it? I'll break it up. Or do you want a short word? Let's try it. Okay. Minabashki, Minnesagani, Batosa Chagani, Badwingwash Chagani, Bequajigan. And you can just take away Bequajigan, which is bread. But one of the images in that whole thing is the way that the blueberries have their little faces covered. It's very sweet. Anyway, I just wanted to teach you a word. But this is this particular poem. It's from two different places in this volume. And it is honoring the language and also reclaiming the language at the same time as, understanding how difficult that is after having been through the history we've been through. Akawe, a prelude. Between languages, in the shadow of old losses, we adorn ourselves. Everywhere careful words break, open, they feed us. Remembrance like bread. Songs like bread, Wikwandawin. Inhabited, we whisper sort tongue hungers, this blood caress of gone, an almost melody. Nuji Ikwe Nagamo, courting song. How we yearn for morsels, words, memory tangle of hands kneading the quajigun. This dollop of sweetest dough, a language prisoner's bread. This is to hunger, Bakaday. This is to break, Bigoshkad. To speak is to eat, Wikwandawin, feast food. Our jagged stuttering, a giveaway. Mari o iriwag. This is to share. All right, I am going to close with, that's about right. Timing? Yeah, okay, I just want to make sure. I always have more poems and then talk too much. I am going to close with a poem from Copper Yearning. No, actually, yes, I am. Okay, so this one is a poem that recognizes the losses that we faced. I actually, like many of you, lost a lot of people during the pandemic, and we are people in this nation are losing relatives every day, and some of them not to death, but to disappearance. And I just want to read this to kind of both, say how do we deal with the loss of someone who dies? How do we deal with that? But also just to remind us of what is our place in all of this, right? Afterwards, because the smallness of our being is our only greatness, because one night I was in a room listening until only one heart beat, because in these last years I've worn and nearly worn out my black funeral shoes, because the gesture of afterwards means the same thing, no matter who speaks them, because faith, belief, forever are only words, no matter, because matter disappears always and eventually, because action is not matter, but energy that's spent changes being, and if death too is a change of being, perhaps action counts. And if death is a land of unknowing, perhaps we do well to live with uncertainty. And if death is a forested land, it would be good to learn trees. And if death is a kingdom, it would be good to practice service. And if death is a foreign state, we should loosen allegiance to this one. And if our soul leaves our body, then we must rehearse goodbye. Chimigwet.
Thank you so much for that beautiful reading, and to Sylvia for such a thoughtful introduction. Thank you. Next up, I would like to invite one of Joe's students, Brendan Nicholin, to the stage to introduce Joe Diggs.
Good evening. I'm here to introduce Joe Diggs. Joe Diggs was born to a military family on Croix Chapeau, France, and grew up on Cape Cod, where he now lives and paints. A little about his past career. Diggs earned his BFA at Southeastern Massachusetts University and then returned after years of travel and work experience to earn his MFA from the Massachusetts College of Art and Design Low Residency Program right here at the Fine Arts Work Center. Joe's work is housed in many private collections on the Cape, nationally and internationally. He currently has a mural on the Macmillan Pier, and there is a retrospective of his work currently on view at PAM. Joe is represented by the Berta Walker Gallery in Provincetown and has a new show opening up this Friday. He has also done a residency at the Higgins Art Gallery at Cape Cod Community College, which is where I'm currently matriculated. When I first began to experience Joe's work, what drew me into his art was its brightness, its vibrancy, and emotional depth. I could see that Joe paints with truth and authenticity. I find his work to be surreal and evocative. There are many dreamlike and abstract qualities that I find incredibly appealing. Although he doesn't work in the context of realism, there is a greater sense of reality to be found in his work than I have found in a lot of painting that is more grounded in realism. Within his paintings, there are objects that are recognizable and also those that cannot quite be extinguished. Muse and stormy weather are particularly excellent examples of this. Joe's approach to the creative path into the picture plane is something that I hope to learn from and grow as an artist. I'm incredibly grateful for the opportunity to take this workshop. I will end with a quote from Joe, who was named 2025 Artist of the Year by the Arts Foundation of Cape Cod. Art gives me space to find my center. It is both my passion and my work. And without further ado, here is Joseph Diggs.
Hi, everyone. It's an honor to be here. It's always a joy just to be in this building. Well, this has been a big year for me. As Brendan just said, geez, you can't make it up. It all falls together the way it falls together, and it's just an honor. Everything's an honor to be here right now. The story that I'm getting ready to tell you is a little bit about my past and about how I kind of got to where I am now. And I'm not really sure how I got to where I am right now, so the story might go a little crazy, but hang in there with me, will you? So before we even start, I really wanted to make sure I said something about these guys. Raymond Sanders and Dana Chandler were two artists that I actually appreciated very much. Dana Chandler was part of the Northeastern and not Mass Art, but UMass Amherst coalition of artists, a black coalition of artists that did incredible work here in Boston. I was fortunate enough to meet him in my undergrad when my professors at Southeastern Massachusetts decided to pull me aside and give me a brief, just a really big talk to. They sat me down and said, look, you have potential. And then one of the teachers said, why don't you come to my house and have dinner? And Dana Chandler was there, and he looked at my work and said, wow, you got something, you should do something. And Raymond Saunders was one of those guys who was one of the first people that I recognized, that I was like, oh, this guy is a great painter, and he's black, and how come I don't know him? How can somebody this fantastic go unnoticed? Which then I found a whole bunch of people like him who became my mentors. So, and then I realized that was my group. That was my group of people, that they were my peers, and that I needed to work so that I could be on the same strata as them, and I'm still working for it. Anyways, the name of Circles Across Time is the name of our show at Berta Walker's on Friday. And, so any of you at once we leave here, if you'd like to come and meet me and talk a little bit about it on Friday, please show up at Berta's and we'll have a wonderful time. As a matter of fact, I'm going to take the 4 or 5 of my students over to Pam tomorrow at noon, and we're going to talk over the artwork that's there. So if any of you would like to come in and talk with that, then that's fine as well. It's great to be able to have the opportunity to actually show you the work instead of just putting them, because some of these projections aren't as good as quite as I'd like it to be. But let's move on. So after, as Bryn just said, after I graduated from Southeastern Massachusetts University, I got a job with U.S. Airways. And, I was a flight attendant, so, speaking to the public wasn't really all that difficult after you get finished doing those announcements all those times, right? So I want to let you guys know there are 3 exits in here. There's one in the back and there's 2 on the sides, all right? I'd like you to buckle your seatbelts by putting the insert into the buckle, pull the strap on the side to unfasten, lift the faceplate of buckle, right? But most importantly, as we go through this whole situation, while you're tight in your seatbelts, I want you to realize that if anything should go wrong during this, there will be no air. There will be no bags. But if there was one, make sure that you put yours on first so that the child next to you or the one who is acting like a child you'll be able to take care of them. But I joke, but at the same time, all those things made a whole lot of sense to me, because actually, it's your exits that make so much sense. I mean, we're brought into this world, but we exit just as quickly and just as unceremoniously as we came in. My artwork was started from, I had an older brother who was an artist, and he passed away at 19 when I was 16. So the circle started then. But little did I know it started then. Little did I know. Little did I know I went to Barnstable High School. They had a great art department with a guy who would lie to me and tell me if your brother had talent, so do you. So I just sat there. I said, if I can beat this guy at anything, I'll beat him. Didn't know that I only had 2 years to try to get my skill set up to point, but I was unsuccessful at that. But now he knows. He knows I'm much better than he ever was, I think. Anyways, that's how it went. My circles keep going. You meet somebody, later on in life you meet him again, and then you wonder, wow, why did that happen to me? No, it wasn't serendipitous. It was the spirits. It definitely is the spirits. I'm honored by being here also because I followed someone who speaks in the same language in what I do. It's a language of the people that were brought here. We are true Americans. As an African American, I'm a true American. I'm a true American, not really an African American. I'm more American than the Americans. There's only one person here who's more American than I am. That's how I see it. So with all that, with all the injustices that are done constantly to us as people, brown and black people, I got to get it out. I got to figure out a way to work with it. So with my brother, when he passed away, I found a way to work through that. And then, unfortunately, life kept giving me deaths, and I really got really good at painting death, And as most kids who are in that age group, you go like, all right, now you go from the death stuff and you start drawing a bunch of eyes and crosses and all kinds of stuff like that. And I went through those changes. Little to think that I would ever come back to them now. And so, and now I'm back to doing circles. I've come 360 all the way back, and it feels really good to be able to say I've been here before, but more comfortable now than ever before. So my confidence is risen to a level in which I feel like I can seriously sit here and tell all of you that this is as good as it's got so far, but there's going to be more in the future. I'm very bright, I'm very happy, and I'm very excited. So without that, we'll go into this a little bit. So this is Summer Sensation. I don't know where this painting came from. It just appeared. It started with just listening to music. I don't even know what song it was when I started, but as the summer continued, I kept working with it, and this is how we ended up. It moves. The piece actually moves when you sit in front of it. It has its own, it's got its own light. It comes out of it by itself. It doesn't require, it was nice of you, Miracle, to turn down the lights, but it doesn't require it. It's got its own light. I gave, the show this week is going to be interesting because there's a whole lot of 8x10 paintings. This is an 8x10 painting. It's extremely small, and that's probably why it didn't reproduce so well. But they're very, very small. And these are thoughts that have come to it has risen in my thought process. So while I'm sitting in my house and looking out, I have a pond that I look over all the time. And what I do is, being a bachelor, I eat a lot of Chinese food and drink a lot of beer. And what happens is the Chinese food comes with separators, the little separators that they make sure so that the food doesn't slide into each other and stuff. Well, I use those as a jump-off spot. So I love it because I've got a lot of them, right? So I can keep them, and I give them away to people, and it's this great conversation. But more importantly, it makes it so I can work through some little issues that I don't even know I'm going through. So as I develop these little cards out of these little pieces of corrugated paper, it turns into a painting, and and that's part of a cycle that keeps repeating. These paintings were made on reused canvases that when I taught incarcerated youth, that I had to destroy their pieces. So instead of destroying them, I reused them, and I kind of dug up a little bit of what they had underneath of them, and then I put mine on top of them. So that's what that's all about. There's more of it. It's the theme. This is a piece called Micah's Math. So the pond that I just spoke of is in the background. And what I do is I love to play these multiple games of just kind of collaging, but it's not. It's actually drawing and writing over top of your work. But I think of it as in a collage way, like if I actually was to separate these things and put them back together, they would look like this. So the spaces in between spaces end up being decorative, and I try to find these patterns that would run one pattern into the next pattern. And then I was playing cards with my next door neighbor, and I was like, you know what? I need a piece of paper, because we got to keep score. And then I just put it right over top of the painting. Look, you can't make this stuff up. Every once in a while shit happens, and this happens. So I always have like artwork around that actually runs into real life. And then when real life hits the art, then it really becomes something. So it's too dark to talk about. I got a chance to go down to Miami at the Basel, Art Basel, and I saw this. I saw this scene where they were actually using the satellites because of all the media stuff that's going on, and I was like, ooh, they're shooting for stars. They're shooting for the next art star. So this is called Art Star, and it was one of those wonderful weekends of going down and looking at a lot of artwork, and it made me rise to the occasion of understanding that if they're looking for art stars, I need to go home. And I need to make some art, so next time I come back here, I'll be one of the art stars. I'm not coming back as a person who's just looking anymore. So I had this wonderful, wonderful opportunity to work with Terry Lynn Carrington. Terry Lynn is a fantastic musician. Her group is, well, she plays with multiple groups, but she's the youngest person ever to attend Berklee School of Music. She was, I believe it's 12 or 13, she was accepted. She's somebody I've known my whole life, and she is an amazing individual. Not only is she a fantastic musician, she takes the arts and she pulls them all in. So the show that I was fortunate to have this piece and a few other pieces involved with had multiple artists, so Nicolene Thomas, Carrie Mae Weems, a few other big names, and I was fortunate enough for her to say to me, I'm the only male, you are gonna be the only male in my show. So that show's been around the country. It started at the Carr Center in Detroit and it's continuing. So this piece is called Waiting Games. It's actually direct correlation to her music, her album called Waiting Games with her group called Social Science. This is the continuation, the mural is a continuation of Waiting Games. The mural that's down in McMillan Wharf was after I saw a sunset on Herring Cove, I was sitting there thinking, how beautiful would it be for her music to kind of riff over top of this beautiful sunset, kind of off of the water. I concentrated on one song more specifically than others, but the one song was Pray the Hate Away. Well, actually the song is called Pray the Gay Away. And it's a story about her going through changes with relatives who said, what you need in your life is more God. And so you need to pray the gay away. And she replied, no, we need to pray the hate away. And so my piece on McMillan Wharf constantly I wrote the redundancy of pray the hate away as my way of praying the hate away. Along with that, Asada Shakur's comments, her quote on that nobody in this world has ever, I'm trying to recall everything, regained their freedom by appealing to the moral senses of the people who have oppressed them. Nobody. So when we think about that, we're doomed, right? But we're not, because you know, we know that you know. And it's up to you to make this thing move forward. I have the privilege of being with a gentleman who said to me the other day that we've learned, we know. We've watched how Dr. King handled this stuff. We've watched how black people have marched this country. We know how to do it, and we know how to do it right. The question is will we? I still believe in us. I think we will. So let's get back to what I literally like to do. I like to paint from music. This is at the Newport Jazz Festival. This was Laufey. She's I believe a Swedish musician, and she sings like an angel. All right. Unfortunately, the whites on this is a lot stronger than the painting. All right, so it's a lot more calmer than this, and if you come on Friday, you'll see it. But the beauty of this painting is that while we were listening to Laufey, she's singing these lullabies, these wonderful soft music, and it's 102 degrees out. Everybody's been drinking and eating gummies all day, and everybody passed out. So that's why you don't really see anybody. They're all just laid out there. They're all just steaming in the hotness. And we just sat there and just was kind of lullaby to sleep by Laufey. It was a fabulous set. I mean, I'm making it sound like it was terrible, but it was actually fabulous. It was so calming. It was so mellow. In the middle of all that heat, everybody just chilled out and fell asleep. This is Robert Glassbar's set. So what I did with this one, I had a chance to do what I'm doing with my students right now. I actually sat and played with them while I was sketching, and I sketched about 3 different sketches, and then I took the best of those 3 sketches, combined them together, and came up with this composition. So, I think we're, and then we're gonna finish with this one. This one's not being shown right now, but it's the ascension of the circles. And once again, to make my point, I went to, as Brendan said earlier, I graduated from my degree right here from Mass Art. I wasn't accepted to the program. I came here to tell a friend of mine who I urged to come to the program, to apply and get yourself into this program. I urged her to do so. And then when she got accepted and came, she was doing her thing, I was supporting her, and I'd show up and I'd say, wow, this is just wonderful. Aren't you having a great day? She's like, yeah, it's fabulous. You really should do it. She said, what are you afraid of? I'm like, I'm 47 years old. I have no reason to really do this at this point, except for I really want my master's degree. But otherwise, I don't know if I can handle a financial crisis that it's going to put me in, and I don't know if this is a smart thing to do. And she's like, so you're scared. And I was like, I ain't scared. I didn't like that at all. So I went and I applied, and I got rejected. I got rejected. It was ugly. I was so pissed off. I was angry, and I drove into the parking lot to tell her that I got rejected. And I drove in here with such an attitude. And this lady walked out, and she says, excuse me, do you know where you are? I'm like, yeah, I'm at the Fine Art Work Center, and I know these are all the people who are going to graduate school, and I wanted to go to this damn school, and I'm not going. And she said, who are you? I said, my name is Joe Diggs. And she said, well, Joe, I don't even know who you are. And I said, well, obviously I don't know who you are, but I wasn't good enough to even get in front of you, so I must not be that good. And she said, no, hold on a minute. My name is Barbara Baker. She said, so she said, look, if you can get your stuff together, would you like to apply? I said, of course I would. She says, well, I said, I'll go home right now. I live in Austerville. I live an hour and a half away from here. I'll go home right now. I'll grab that work. I'll come back. She said, no way. No, don't worry about it. Relax. I said, all right. She said, I'll put it in front of him. I'll ask the professors. If it's possible, we'll call you. And I said, okay, that's good enough. She called me in a couple days, and she said, yeah, we'd love to see your work. I came up here with about 6 pieces, like 9-foot paintings that were unstretched, and I just rolled them right out on them with all the boldness I had. And they looked at it like, okay, all right, no big deal. Okay. And I was like, I thought I was going to blow them away. That didn't work. And then one of the professors, Mr. Creamer, he looked at me and said, we'll give you a call in a couple of days and we'll figure it out. 2 days went by, they called up and said, would you like to join us? I'm like, of course I would, So the circle was completed once again. Barbara Baker, I bless you for doing what you've done, but it's happened again, right? I get to, with a bunch of friends, we go to see Jack Whitten. He was talking with Mark Bradford, and Jack Whitten was supposed to be speaking at the Rose Garden, at the Rose Gallery, for Brandeis. And I went to see Mark Bradford. I had spent a day with him when I was accepted to Cal Arts, and I decided not to go, but he was trying to talk me into going. And I was like, I'm an East Coast guy, and you guys don't paint. I want to paint, and so I don't think this is the school for me. And he showed me his hoop dress, his Laker hoop dress, and I thought it was really cute, and we laughed and carried on, and then the next thing I know, I'm at the ICA, and I look at his work, and I'm like, holy shit, this guy is the guy I was sitting next to, and he showed me the same thing, and wow, this is crazy. And then one of my buddies said, he's going to be talking with Jack Whitten. And I knew Jack's work, but I didn't know who Jack was. So I'm like, oh yeah, I love that guy's painting, Jack Whitten. We'll go and check him out. So I can't wait to meet Mark again. So we get to the Rose Garden and the Rose Gallery, and the first thing that the lady says is, unfortunately, Mark won't be here today. He had a death in his family. But Jack is willing to sit in and talk for the whole speech. Jack Whitten got up, and ladies and gentlemen, honestly, I looked at him and went, oh shit, my dad's here. He could be my dad's brother. If my dad had a brother, he would be my dad's brother. And then he started talking about being from Alabama, and then he went into talking about the Tuskegee Airmen and how he was there before he ended up going to New York. And he said to me, he said to all of us, he said, yeah, so I was a Tuskegee Airman for a Tuskegee Institute for a little while. And I was like, oof, my uncles were Tuskegee Airmen. And so when we had a chance to talk one-on-one, I told him, I said, my uncle flew, for the Tuskegee Airmen. I had the other one who was a doctor. He said, who's your uncle who flew? I said, my Uncle Mitchell. He says, well, I have his plane in my studio. And I was like, holy crap, that's too crazy. He goes, yeah. And we just kept talking. It was really a wonderful, once again, the 360 moment. And on my way home, I was so excited I only called a couple of friends on my way home because I had this wonderful meeting with this wonderful, fantastic artist. And so I called my friend Grace Hopkins, and I said, Grace, I just met Jack Whitten. I said, this guy is incredible. And what she said verbatim was, oh, Jack. And I was like, you're too young. You have no clue. You don't know Jack Whitten. You can't. There's no way it can happen. Got home a few weeks later. We talked a little bit. He was having a talk at BU. I went up, and I told Grace I was going to see Jack at BU, and she said, well, tell Jack. I said, hello. Well, we got there, and Jack was there with his wife and his daughter, Marcini. And I said, my friend Grace Hopkins told me to tell you hello. And Mrs. Whitten looks at me and goes, oh, Gracie. I still have her Campbell's stars, chicken and stars, because she doesn't like to eat anything that we have in our house. And I realized that was another 360 moment. There's a time when this work comes to you, you don't go to it. If you put your foundation down the way that you should put you down, if you're true to what you're doing, I just honestly believe that this thing comes to you. I didn't pick this. I'm here in front of you saying honestly that I've always wanted to do this, but I never thought that I'd ever be here. I'm honored. I'm truly honored to be here. I'm honored to be the 2025 Artist of the Year. It means the world to me. So I'd like to thank you guys for listening to my story. And I'd like to thank everybody else who's taken the time to come here and just do what they do, because this place is a very, very, very special place. I hope that you feel it like I feel it. Thank you.
Joe, thank you. Thank you for sharing your work and your story with us. And Brendan, thank you for such a great introduction to Joe's work. So at this point, I'd like to invite both of our artists to the stage for a Q&A. So for those of you who would like to pose a question, please raise your hand and Miracle will come by with the microphone. For any of the viewers that are streaming remotely, we want them to be able to hear your question. So wait for the mic. Who would like to kick it off? Here we go. Over there.
Hi, this is a message for Joe. This is a question for Joe and a message. What has surprised you most about your own work?
I don't know if I can answer that. I'll try. But surprised me about my own work. The fact that I guess admit that I can actually be honest with it. It's not easy. It's not easy to go to the bottom line and actually say, okay, I can do this. You get filled with a lot of ideas of what you should do or what you think you should do. And I had to find a way to kind of be real to that. And I think it's honestly because of all the deaths. I mean, there's a truism in that, and you realize that it's, you have X amount of times on this earth, and you were blessed to have these people in your life. And so the spirit's pretty much the work of what you're dealing. You realize that you're on their shoulders, that you stand on them. And I guess maybe that's the part that I'm really surprised about, is that I'm actually getting to that. I'm actually finding that space.
I have a question. I was wondering if either of you could speak about what your artistic practice looks like outside of institutions and what it looked like before you went into an MFA program or went into school. Like, how did you consider yourself as an artist outside of the place that created you?
Okay. Well, I think we're just constantly evolving. That's my experience, is that I even look back at my early work, and I mean, everything, there's a through line. There are certainly through lines, but things change, I think. And for me, I've become more, I tend to do more interart than I did early on. And I'm also feel a little more liberated to follow my own inclination. Sort of what you were saying is that there are these things we think we're supposed to be, do, measure up to, etc. And so I've sort of broken from expectation now, I feel like, I just want to do what I want to do. And so my own, artistic practice actually has a lot to do with, I do a lot of my work from a kayak. and as you might have seen in the photos, I spend a lot of time in a kayak in the Boundary Waters Canoe Area Wilderness with my camera, with my notebook, and that is where I do a lot of the early drafting of my poems and so forth. And then there's a crossover between the art and the language for me. And so that's trying to find the intersections is part of it. And then I think that my world is a little bit bigger. I've always been doing resistance work, but I was more doing resistance work with my own community. And now I feel like it's broader, that I'm working in a larger space with that work. And Indigenous Nations Poets is actually part of that. It's making a pathway for younger writers.
For me, similar. We have. It was a little I don't get very intimidated by following people or doing anything, but I was slightly intimidated today. This woman is incredible. She also speaks the language in which I speak, but she speaks hers much better. Because English is not my first language. Painting is. So I do much better with that than I do with actually the word, the spoken word. So I thank you. It was beautiful. It was beautiful listening to you, and it was something. Also, one of my major partners in life was an Indigenous person, so there's a tie that goes between that as well. So I think what happened for me was I didn't have a voice. My brother was my idol. I walked like him. I talked like him. I did everything he did. And then when he passed, it gave me it made me stand up and have my own voice. And then with the prompts from fantastic teachers and professors, they helped me develop, well, I shouldn't say develop, they helped me find my voice and speak it in my own words. And now, what graduate school did for me was made me realize that all of that stuff that I had taught, what was taught to me earlier, is inside me now, and I don't have to learn it. I need to let it come out, and that's what I'm trying to teach this week, is that we all have our art, and our art is the art, not the art that you're trying to create possibly. It's from within. It doesn't come from without, even though we use some structures from the outside to keep us into the house that we're looking to be in. But it is indeed us, our personal, our travels, our values, our processes that we've been through in life that makes the art. So we're just the mediums. We're the mediums for making it. So that's kind of, my voice has changed because I have one now.
Thank you.
Well, I thank you. I was going to ask Kim a little bit more about that interrelationship between your visual language and your written language, if you could speak to that just a bit more.
Sure. So I've always made photos, and I've always played with language. And there was an era when I realized that a lot of times I began to do ekphrasis, right? But I was doing it between my own work. Like, so I might be creating an image to go with a poem or writing a poem that went with an image. And so I began to use those together, realizing that they're trying to touch the same essence. And I think it's partly also because there are silences, like there are visual places we can't go and there are spoken places we can't go, so that ineffable, that we can't really, there are things language can't, don't have the words, and we don't have the image to say certain things, so we're always gesturing, right? And it just gives you a couple of different ways to point, so I feel like poetry is an active attention and photography is an active attention, and they're also both gestures. Like they want to say, look closer, look beyond, look through, and that's an invitation they send out to the reader, listener, viewer, right? And so I think that bringing them together for me, well, actually the layers of text and image, that's another whole thing. For me, they come from, again, the Anishinaabe dream songs, because they have images as well as language, and they also come from why can't I say this? The work that was created in prisons by Native people that was done over the top of ledgers, so the ledger art, it's across tribes, but one of the most famous ledger artists were the Cheyenne warriors that were imprisoned, and so they were given ledger books that might have had accounting from a trading post, and there's a ledger book that has record of a bullets, like shooting, like records shooting, right? And anyway, they created beautiful artwork over the top of that. And so there's obviously this kind of, it's like a palimpsest, right? Where something's spilling into something else, and it creates something beyond either of those things. And so I, in my mind, always think they knew exactly what they were doing, making these spiritual images over the top of a record of target practice, right? Or something like that. And so I was thinking how rich that is to have that, bring those things together. So that's what I'm trying to teach myself, is I have ideas, but I don't have the technology to do everything I want to do yet, so I'm learning.
Excellent. And I can double down on that and say, yeah, that's the nexus. That's where the sweet spot is. The sweet spot is definitely not actually like having the ability, knowing the ability to make something, but it's the ability to bridge the gap between what you don't know and what you're trying to know. And how can you emulate, or how can you push this information out to people in a way that they can receive it? It's, I don't really care if the viewer likes or doesn't like my piece, but I do care about is whether or not I'm able to say what I'm trying to say, to give you that opportunity to say you don't or you do like it. So that's where the rubber lies for me, but very well.
Hi, I'm Donna, and I just wanted to say, when Dr. Blaeser was speaking, I couldn't have thought of a better pairing for the two of you tonight. Joe Diggs, I know from being in the community of painters, and I have always been kind of in awe and marveling at your earlier work. History was of your fundamental background, your family, the way in which you dug through all of the injustices, the indignities, and the way in which your family came up, and the way you thrive continuously to reach above it. I mean, you say in the shadow of your brother, so to speak, but you wouldn't have been in that shadow without having the layers and the DNA and the awareness to pull from all of that was in that DNA of yours. And it's just, you know, for all of us, we're all immigrants in this country except for Dr. Blaeser's people, so to speak.
This is true.
It just, I don't have a question, but I just have a thank you. And
Thank you.
Gratitude for what I'm hearing, what's being honored, what's being spoken, what's being held onto.
Well, Donna, I would like to speak on that, just a tad bit of what you said earlier about the family and what my work, because as you can see, this work did not represent any of my family. It was just about this evolving circle situation in which we talked about. The reason being, the biggest reason being right now is because the political era is just a little too strong for me to say exactly how I want to say without just being the total asshole that I can be. So I'm trying to balance myself a little bit right now. There's a time, I think, when we have to stop and collect and figure out and kind of plot, and I feel like this is the time to collect and plot and figure things out so that we'll never be back in these pictures, in this scene again. So, you know, so there is a little bit, if I was to start working about my family history under this current situation, it would be really ugly. And not that ugly isn't necessary, but right now in my life, I just needed some beauty. Right after COVID, after all this stuff, so I'm trying to put a little bit more, some simple beauty into the world instead of putting more vices, more ways for us to draw lines. I think it'd be better if we look at, you know, a couple of easy paintings, and so we can say, hey, isn't that nice, and can't we just get along right now?
Absolutely, and I just wanted to say, and I totally understand that, and appreciate that as well. I just want to say later, I want to talk to you about Mark Bradford.
Oh, I'd love to.
Was there one more question? Anyone?
Joe, I just have a question about kind of the pieces that you did around Newport Jazz Fest and kind of like the improvisational nature of jazz. What does the process look like for painting something live where so many unexpected things can happen?
Well, that's exactly it, right? Everything's unexpected. I mean, well, I you know, dealing with jazz musicians a little bit, you know, things don't always go smooth with them either while they're jamming. It's the ones who can you know, ad lib and you know, improvise as they go along that are the geniuses in the crew. And that's what I learned from that. So my first experience was with, well, my first live experience was with a piano player, Anna Glig, at the Cape Cod Museum. They had a camera on me while I was painting live to her playing opera. It was horrible. Horrible. I mean, I was scared, I was petrified, the thing it just went downhill in a hurry. Everything was crashing and burning, and I couldn't handle it anymore. And I just looked up at the camera and went, okay, just stop. And she kept playing. And I realized that I had what it took, but I didn't at that moment. It was from my athletic training all my life that just said to myself right there, no, we're not taking this right now. You need to calm down, you need to get this together, and then we need to kick this in the butt. And so I chilled, I stopped, I shook it off, and then they disappeared. Everybody disappeared, and the music came back to me like it did when I was in college, and that professor said, never stop doing this. And I just started ad-libbing. And then I realized that I was okay, and I've never had a problem joining in with any jazz group ever since then. It's a mindset. It's a mindset of just being able to say, okay, I belong in here with them, and I can create alongside with them, even though it's not the same type of art. I'm not using an instrument, I'm not using their type of instrument, I'm using my instrument. That's all. So come and paint with me, we'll have some fun.
A big round of applause for poet Kimberly Blaeser and artist Joseph Diggs. Thank you very much. So remember that Kim and Joe both actually have